type of activities that WNBA star Brittany Griner went through when she was freed from Russia. We heard from these freed Americans overnight, including Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. Here's part of what he had to say.
Evan, how are you feeling?
I'm all right. It was a good flight.
What about the show of support?
It's
looking forward to seeing my family down here and just recuperating from 5 years, 7 months, and 5 days of just absolute nonsense by the Russian government.
And that's Paul Whelan there, again, referring to his treatment in Russia as absolute nonsense. The group landed here in Texas about 4 hours, just over 4 hours after they first touched down in the U.S. at Joint Base Andrews, Jose. And again, those activities are ongoing here. We're trying to get some more details about what they might exactly be going through in terms of counseling, physical examination, et cetera. Anything like that, we're looking for more details.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Courtney's just thinking that these are some of the things that we were talking about, you and I, yesterday at this time when we were getting and breaking that news that the 3 Americans were already in U.S. custody. What else have you learned, Courtney, about how this deal was made?
Yeah, I mean, Jose, this was a deal that was not months, but years in the making. In fact, it even predated when we just saw Evan Gershkovich there. It predated him even being detained by Russian authorities. So several years ago, while the Biden administration was negotiating for the release of Americans, including Paul Whelan, who we also just saw there with Jesse, while they were negotiating, it became very clear to U.S. negotiators, including those at the State Department, that Vladimir Putin was not going to let any Americans out of Russian prison unless he got one person back. That's Vadim Krasikov. And he's an FSB agent who's been detained in Germany for several years on murder charges. He's believed to have been an assassin for Russian intelligence services. Now, the U.S. went to German authorities to talk to them about it, but they were very resistant to release him. That was when, according to administration officials, Secretary of State Antony Blinken and others at the State Department decided to sort of open the aperture on a larger deal like the one that we saw unfold here yesterday. It included, initially, it even included Alexei Navalny. But all that changed, as you well know, Jose, when Navalny died in prison in February earlier this year. But the U.S. continued working on this swap. We heard from Jake Sullivan earlier today on the Today Show, where he talked about the tough decisions that have to be made here. And yes, tough decisions made by the White House, but you could argue that the toughest decision of all really had to come out of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. He was ultimately, according to administration officials, the one who made the decision to release Vadim Krasikov, and that was really the domino that let loose the rest of this larger deal that saw all these prisoners released and go back to multiple countries here. So what's key here is, yes, there were negotiations that occurred for years between U.S. and Russian authorities, but at the end of the day, Vadim Krasikov, this FSB agent, again, an assassin for Russian intelligence services, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's decision to release him was what really allowed the rest of this to fall into place, Jose.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, so what more do we know about the extraordinary nature of President Biden's involvement in this entire deal?
Yeah, of course, he was brought in at key moments to talk to other heads of state in order to try to facilitate this. He was, in fact, talking with Olaf Scholz. As Courtney just said, there was a moment in January at a phone call where he implored Scholz to go ahead and agree to release an assassin, as Courtney said, something that went against the grain by saying, look, we can get Navalny out. That didn't work, but Scholz says, for you, I will do this. When Navalny was killed, they had to sort of recalibrate. They added Vladimir Kara-Murza, another Russian dissident with an American green card who was being held there, who they also feared could be killed in a Russian prison. He became sort of a moral equivalent to Navalny in some ways in enticing the Germans to keep going along with this deal. Then the president, of course, was brought in at the very last minute to talk to the Slovenian prime minister, because they too had 2 Russians under custody that they were being asked to release. And the president had to call the Slovenian prime minister from his vacation house in Rehoboth Beach on a Sunday. It happened to be 2 Sundays ago. As we all remember now, of course, that Sunday was also notable for something else he did that day. Just 97 minutes after that phone call with the Slovenian prime minister to facilitate this prisoner swap, he released his statement saying he was backing out of his reelection bid and, in effect, ending his political career. So that was quite a Sunday for President Biden.
Indeed, and Julia, President Biden stressed the importance of the United States' allies in securing this deal. Listen to this.
Toughest call on this one for other countries, because I asked them to do some things that were against their immediate self-interest, and really very difficult to do.
And, you know, we've referred to some of them, but what were some of the biggest difficulties here?
Well, I think the release of Vadim Krasikov was the biggest one. Again, recall what he was in jail for, what he was serving a life sentence in Germany for. He had shot a man on orders from the Russian government in broad daylight in the middle of the afternoon at a Berlin park, with children around, families around. I mean, it was a really gruesome murder. It was not easy for the Slovenians, for example, to give up illegals, Russian illegals that it had found, basically sleeper agents. Norway had to give people. Poland gave someone up. And to President Biden's point, again, if you treat your alliances like a loan shark treats basically a tardy customer, you're not going to get this kind of deal. Because it's not just, a what have you done for me lately arrangement. It's not as transactional as President Trump would want you to believe. There has to be investment that doesn't immediately pay off. It doesn't immediately pay off in cash and money, and then you can get this kind of stuff done. But again, if you demean allies, if you insult them while cozying up to America's foes and dictators, this is not going to happen.
Yeah, and Courtney, just moments ago, the president was asked about another American still being held in Russia, Mark Fogel. The president said that he's not giving up. Fogel's family released a statement following this prisoner swap yesterday, saying in part, quote, "For the second time in 3 years since Mark Fogel's detention in Russia, we are completely heartbroken and outraged that Mark has been left behind while the U.S. government brought other Americans home." What do we know about efforts to get Fogel free?
Yeah, there was a point where they thought the U.S. officials hoped that Fogel would be included in this current deal. He wasn't, obviously. Officials say they are continuing to work. They're literally starting again today to try to negotiate his release. This one is tough because he was a longtime teacher in Russia, and many current and former State Department officials who he taught their children have written letters to the Biden administration, to the State Department, imploring them to help him get out. And I mean, in a strange coincidence, Fogel's mother actually was at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, where there was the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. She actually met with him right before the rally. And so Donald Trump has also spoken a little bit about the need to release him, and she went and did media on that afterwards. He happens to be from Butler, Pennsylvania, but officials insist that they are working feverishly to try to release him as well, Jose.
Jesse Kirsch, Courtney Cubie, Julia Yoffe, and Peter Baker, thank you so very much. Up next, new numbers this morning show the job market slowed in July. What it means for the economy next. Plus, the Middle East on high alert after the killings of top Hamas and Hezbollah commanders. What this could mean for a region already under tension. The vetting process for Vice President Harris's running mate is close to wrapping up. What we can expect over the next couple of days on that front. We're back in 90 seconds. You're watching Jose Díaz-Balart Reports on MSNBC.
Join us during the anniversary truckload event. Our showrooms are overflowing with truckloads of top-tier product, all in stock and ready for immediate delivery to your home. Start with this modern, low-profile panel bed with or without matching canopy frame for only $7.95. Get the entire bedroom set, including the bed with or without canopy, 9-drawer dresser, matching mirror, and a 2-drawer nightstand for only $19.95. Only while supplies last, and only at More Furniture.
You've got too much on your plate to worry about what to put on it next. That's where we come in. We're Factor, your one-stop shop for fresh, fully prepared meals, packed with premium ingredients and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes flat. Did we mention delivered right to your door? Yeah, we got that covered too. Looks like eating well just got a whole lot easier.
Visit factormeals.com/peacock50 and use code peacock50 for 50% off.
When I was working in the Senate, I didn't realize that it's the perfect training for the job that I have now, covering government, covering politics, the complexity of it all. You learn how to explain that and how to live through that when you work in this building. Mastering the detail is crucial to being able to present anything that happens in Senate buildings like this or any of the other news centers that we have to focus on every day.
13 past the hour. We're following breaking news on the economy. Right now, markets are down significantly after a brand new jobs report shows the U.S. added just 114,000 jobs in July, far below Wall Street expectations. The unemployment rate edged up to 4.3%, the highest since October of 2021. Looking deeper into the numbers, the black unemployment rate was unchanged from June. Hispanic unemployment rate ticked up 0.4% and 0.3% among whites, and the unemployment rate among Asians ticked down 0.4%. President Biden responded to the news in a statement saying, quote, "Today's report shows employment is growing more gradually at a time when inflation has declined significantly." Joining us now is CNBC's Steve Leisman. Steve, good morning. So what exactly these numbers tell us?
They tell us that the economy is indeed weakening. There's a couple ways to think about this. The first is that we have now come down to a level that is more normal. We were through a very, very strong period of job growth. Some of that looked to be catch-up from the pandemic, where we had a need to really hire a lot of people in industries, especially like healthcare and social assistance, education, leisure and hospitality. That catch-up hiring looks to be done. A little bit of good news in this report. There wasn't a lot of firing. There weren't big negatives in different industries. What there wasn't was a lot of hiring. And so what you get is a more lackluster jobs report. You have this tick up in the employment rate, but because of the way the math is done, I won't bore you with that. But what there was an influx of workers into the workforce. That raises the unemployment rate because those who came into the labor force did not find jobs right away. That's good news for the ability to hire people and for the overall job market. But what we do see is a weakening here of strong job growth down to a more normal level. With the concern on Wall Street, you see the Dow down 900 points right now, that this weakness gathers strength and becomes something more worrisome than just a normalization.
Steve Leisman, thank you very much for clearing that up for us. Appreciate it, my friend. This morning, the Middle East is increasingly on edge after a string of Hamas and Hezbollah officials were killed. Earlier today, a funeral was held in Qatar for Hamas's top leader, one of Hamas's top leaders, who was killed in an explosion while in Iran this week. No one's claimed responsibility. However, Iran blames Israel for his death and is vowing retaliation. Now, Hamas, as you know, is a terror group responsible for the October 7th massacre. This, as the White House says, that during a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday, President Biden reaffirmed U.S.'s support for Israel against all threats from Iran. Joining us now, NBC's Raf Sanchez, live in Tel Aviv. Raf, good morning. What is Israel doing about the possibility of any retaliation from Iran?
Jose, good morning. Israeli forces are on high alert. So that is the air defenses, including the famous Iron Dome missile system, but also Israeli fighter jets ready to scramble in the event of incoming missiles.